Welcome to Pub Talk, the unofficial official craft beer podcast of Oklahoma, where we're all about the 3 Bs, beer, buddies, and bullshit. I'm Jeremy, and I'm joined as always by a dude who thinks it's mighty fine doing a podcast across state lines, Michael.
Hello, hello.
Today we're coming to you from McKinney, Texas, where we have the pleasure of visiting Tupps Brewery. We'll chat with the folks from Tupps all about their brewery and all things craft beer. Before we get started, make sure you hit the subscribe button so you never miss an episode, and give us a follow on social media at Pub Talk Podcast. All right, let's get started. So first off, thank you for having us out today.
Yeah, of course. Thanks for coming.
We usually like to start these spotlight episodes just with kind of letting you introduce yourself to everybody, who you are and what you do here.
Sure. So my name is Chase Lewis. My main role here right now is kind of sales and finance, but it being a family-owned business, it's a little bit of everything. I've plunged toilets and cleaned up puke. But it's, that's just, it's a small growing business. And so everybody does everything. So, my sister does all the artwork and everything, but I have a huge hand in that. And, it's just the creative processes. I think everybody gets a hand in and it's super fun. So anyway, but my name is Chase Lewis. You can call me VP of Sales and Marketing. Family-owned business, like I said. So my dad's the owner, founder of the brewery. My brother's our head brewer. My sister does social media marketing. So, yeah.
Right on.
Well, let's, start off with, how did Tupps start?
Yeah, so the start really goes back to, 2013. My dad and his buddy Tupper were, kind of corporate America guys. We didn't come to this with any kind of crazy pedigree. My brother wasn't a brewer in Germany for 20 years, and we were pretty self-taught. My dad and his buddy Tupper, and then my brother jumped in. We're brewing on a 20-gallon system in my dad's garage for years, which we've called Brewzilla, and we still have it. It's in the brewery, actually on top of the walk-in fridge, and it's one of those things where when you're growing as a home brewer, let's say, I'll back up. What my dad would say if he was answering the question is, he would say my mom bought him a stovetop system, like one of those little 1-gallon brew in a bag kind of things.
Yeah.
And he brewed it and it tasted great. And so he said, I need to do more. And I'm sure it tasted like shit. Can you cuss on this? Sorry. Okay.
Yes, please do.
So when he does the tour, it's hilarious. I love watching my dad do the tour because he's the guy. Like, this is his thing, and he built the business, and but there's some embellishment in some of the what we would call the glory days,
sure.
And I always laugh because I didn't taste it. I'm sure it tastes like shit. You can't brew beer in a bag and
right.
have it come out good on your stove.
Drinkable,
yeah,
maybe.
Maybe. And especially the first time doing it, too.
Yeah.
If you've done it 40 times and you've perfected your cleanliness and all that. Anyway, I'm sure it tastes like shit. But then I think very quickly they decided we need to make this like a full-time hobby, and found on Craigslist this Brewzilla thing. And it was a plumber and an electrician got together and made, there's switches and hoses, and it's not, you can get a gravity fed system on a homebrew, whatever. This is like a rig built from a kitchen supply store and dead kegs, gas fired, but it's a cool system. And they brewed on it every Saturday for years, and it was pretty good. But going back to the point of growing as a home brewer, you brew beer and it tastes horrible, and then you figure out okay, you read a book and I did that wrong, and then you buy a piece of equipment that allows you to brew a little bit better, and then it still tastes horrible, but maybe it's not as bad, and you grow and grow and grow, and you start learning more and buying more, and it ends up becoming a pretty expensive hobby to the point where he built a walk-in cooler in my parents' garage, and just so that they could control the temperature of fermentation. So he had a fermentation cooler, but they kept it 71 degrees or whatever, in Texas heat, in the garage. And then they had a crash cooler that they would keep at, just above freezing, so that, when it came time to crash a corny keg, you pull it out of the walk-in cooler that they built and put it into an ice chest with a, one of those new controls that you can adjust. Anyway, And I think eventually my mom's like, this is great, and I'm glad you guys are having fun, but we've got 40 corny kegs of beer out here that we can't drink fast enough. You're taking over the garage.
Yeah.
Like, what is this? What is the point of this? Right? This is not just a hobby anymore. And I think that if you had asked them back then, they would have lied and said, oh, it's just for fun. But I think they always had it in their minds, like, what if someday, you know?
Yeah.
And I lived in Chicago at the time, and so for me, I'd come home and I'd pitch them on, let's brew a peach saison barrel-aged in white wine barrels for this, and then we can use bread and make it funky and da-da-da. And they're just like, I think we're going to brew the pale ale again. You know, like, just boring and just, like, come on, guys. And first beer they ever wanted to brew, I think, was really brew. And actually, it's one of our favorite beers to this day, but it was kind of like an ambery pale ale, like a cross between, like, Sierra Nevada pale ale and an Oktoberfest. I don't know. It was really good, actually. And we called that Continental Gold when we opened the brewery, and we brewed that for years. But it just kind of, from a hobby, them kind of lying to themselves, growing into, maybe we should put a business plan together, get out of corporate America, and like really make a go of it. So I was living in Chicago at the time, like I said. I kind of helped a little bit, like, with the business plan. Then my wife and I moved back to Texas. And then, you know, at the time when it kind of got serious, 2014, it was, nobody had kids. Half of us weren't married yet. It was nights and weekends. How do we help? Let's, you know, I'd, you know, go to my parents' house and we'd work on the business plan and help with financials. And we're able to convince a really great group of people in McKinney that we were worth something. And I think, honestly, they were more investing in us than in the brewery. I think that they saw us and our family as having potential to do something cool, and not that they, like, really liked the beer back then, you know?
Yeah.
So that was great. One of the best things that's ever happened to us is kind of stumbling on this, like, really great group of people. And then, you know, 2015, you know, we built the brewery up, opened the doors, and I would say that another part of our success, because in your infancy, you make every mistake ever that you can possibly think of. There is no... I mean, you have breweries that have got the pedigree brewer and are well-financed and blah, 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 and you're still going to make mistakes. It's way worse when you're us. You name it, we've done it. Wrong, probably not right. But we learned and we grew, and I think part of our success is we created this really cool environment, and the people of McKinney, Collin County, but in particular McKinney, really wanted to root for us. And I think they saw potential here, and they wanted to come out and hang out and support us. And so when my brother really took over production of the brewery full time, I mean, there's just some things, like, in life, I think, that I've decided I want to do this, and it clicks, and I'm really freaking great at it. And that was Chris with production. Okay. So, I mean, you know, I would like to take some credit for helping to formulate recipes and work with our suppliers to get the best ingredients and all that kind of stuff. But, like, I mean, all the credit and all the props have to go to Chris, because we made pretty good beer for a couple of years, and we did a pretty good job of selling it for a couple of years. But then when we started dabbling into more experimental stuff and really playing around with the different IPAs that we were working on at the time, that all that execution goes to Chris. And then the market, you know, really appreciated all that. And when we've seen a lot of great success since then. So when we first opened the brewery, we did 550 barrels year two. And now that was opening in May, but still, that's a small number. In year two, we did 1,800 barrels. And then in year three, 2,700 barrels. You know, so it's, like, pretty good. We're growing, but it's a slug, right? Every day is a grind, and you're fighting for everything you got. Then we signed with Benny Keith in North Texas, and we signed with Austin Specialty, now Dynamo, in Austin, in San Antonio. And that's also kind of when we started playing around with these new experimental beers. Chris really took the reins of production, and then we did 4,800 barrels. And then the year after that, we did almost 8,000 barrels. And now we're on pace to do probably 12,000 this year. So it's been a crazy ride. Like I said, I mean, even when people look at you and think like, oh, you guys are really successful, this must be really great. He's like, nope, it sucks. Every day is a battle. And we're fighting for everything still. Nothing's changed. Because you run into all new problems when you grow to a point where, hey, okay, cool, like the distributor's placing orders that you can't fill, like what do you do now? Because if you don't fill those orders, they lose faith and confidence in you, and then they just stop selling your stuff. Not bad on them. It's just human nature that if I'm always out of stock on Tupps, I'm just going to stop caring about Tupps. And that's the death knell to, a distributor who has a lot of beers in their portfolio, and they got to go with what wins. Yeah. And if you're winning, they're going to get behind you. And again, we have great relationships, and they've done great by us, but you have to give them a reason to want to care about you. And so you're always fighting. And if you don't buy that tank, you can't fill that order. And so every nickel you make, you put back into the brewery. So I think we're at our growth rate on the cusp of, being able to like finally settle into a rhythm and really focus on creativity and making sure that the beers we do are of the highest quality. We've invested in, a lot of QA stuff. We've invested in a lot of equipment that improves quality and shelf life and all that. But it's been a crazy ride. That was probably the 10-minute answer to the question that you asked, which was, how did you guys start? But
love it. That's what podcasts are for.
I was going to say, podcasts on a time limit.
Yeah, so it's been a lot of fun. I think if you went back in time and showed my dad and Tupper, this is what it's going to take, this is what it's going to cost in reality, and this is what it's going to look like in 5 years, they probably would have been like, yeah, no, let's not do this. This is awful. This is too much. I think there was a part of their, thinking too that maybe this could be a retirement business, and this is absolutely not that. This is so far from that. You don't start a brewery when you're 65 years old and think like this will be a fun way to ride into retirement.
Yeah.
No. So, but the goal is that we've got a really great diverse group of backgrounds within like the family, right? So my sister, she's got a marketing and advertising background. My brother is just killing it on production, and then my background is in sales and finance. So, with our powers combined, right, we should be able to take the reins, no problem. We just got to get to a point where, we've grown up and hired support, around us, and I hesitate to say beneath us because it really is a collaborative environment at the brewery. There's plenty of beers that were not family creations, were not named by family members. I mean, our director of sales, National Standard, that's his beer, and Juice Pack was a total collaborative effort. And so, but that's also part of the fun of it is, you get to meet great people, and when you find people that are doing a great job and you really appreciate what they do and who they are as a person, like they may not have brewing experience or they may not have marketing experience, but they're intelligent, hardworking people, then, the brewing industry is definitely good about grabbing those people and hanging on to them. And we've tried to do that here too. So when we build up that support structure, and then we can get into it if you want to, but like we're looking to move the brewery to a new location, then I think my dad and Tupper can be like, all right, let's work 3 days a week now. So, yeah.
That's a good segue into the Cotton Mill, historic building where the brewery is located right now. Let's talk a little bit about its impact on the design of the brewery and then future plans.
Yeah, I mean, so we're located on the back end of a 120-year-old, cotton producing facility. The history that I'm told is that it was the largest producer of cotton, or largest, miller of cotton or whatever, in the 1920s. And then, through the war effort, they switched to producing uniforms for the war. They did denim in the 40s and 50s, but then basically they shut the cotton mill down. And I think it was owned by the city for a long time. Our landlord, the property owner now, bought the building from the city in the late 90s maybe, and has spent a good amount of time converting it into offices and event space. They do a really good wedding business over there because it's a really cool, old, unique building. But as they have, tried to upgrade the property and, pull the old warped floors out and the old rusted metal out that they can't use, they throw that out the back of the building. And then we, steal it and use that in the brewery. And so, the building itself that we're in was built in the 50s. It's flat storage. There was auto parts just laying on the floor when we moved in. Bob Thomas Ford moved out. We moved in a couple weeks later, and we really had a blank slate, a big open building with nothing in it. And so anything that's in there, we had to build or create or put in there ourselves. So kind of what happened was, while my brother and Tupper were working on like new shiny stainless steel technology signs, blah blah blah, my dad was the one scavenging for all kinds of broken down nonsense to put in the brewery to build the bathrooms and build the grain handling room and build the boiler room and the bar and make the place look cool and add our personality and our culture back into this flat storage building. So it's made easy by the fact that we're right behind this huge old awesome building with tons of scrap coming out of it constantly. So we've been able to use that. And then I think, when we talk about who we are and where we came from and getting to know us, I think, you can't really get a sense for who we are and what we're all about unless you shake our hand, which we can't right now, right? But, and then come see us and see the brewery and what we've created here, because I think that speaks to us more than the black and white IPA can on the shelf. It's great. It's clean. I think it's an awesome design, but come out here and look at what we're doing. It's crazy. So, yeah. But we're outgrowing it. So, like we were talking about earlier, we're outgrowing it. We are at the point now where if we were going to add any more tanks, we're going to start eating into taproom space. We're buying 3 new tanks anyway, and we're just going to have to figure out a place to put them. We've already paid the down payment, so it's we're locked in. So then we're in the process of getting a centrifuge and some other things that'll hopefully improve quality and efficiency and timing and blah, 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 blah. But it just means that the more we do, the more we grow, the less space we have. We've got, cans being delivered and kegs being delivered and put in walkways, and we're bursting at the seams. So we're going to make it through, I think, 2021, or we'll try. But we need a forever home.
Yeah.
And, we've looked at a handful of different locations. We've talked to a couple of different cities. We've talked to our current landlord about growing here more and, maybe adding to the building or whatever. We're not ready to, make an announcement quite yet on where we're going or what we're doing, but we have looked at property in and around McKinney and in other properties in Collin County. And I would like to say that we'll have a new... Well, no, it's us, right? It's not going to be new. But repurposing old... new brewery to move into early 2022.
Right.
Knock on wood. So, yeah, you guys will have to come back and
Absolutely.
do it again then.
Yeah, for sure.
Can you talk to us a little bit about some of the beer laws that have changed recently, and maybe some that you look forward to changing to the growth of the craft beer in Texas?
So I'd say we're in a pretty good spot now. Is it perfect? No. Is it workable? Absolutely. The Texas Craft Brewers Guild and our little lobbying group that we kind of put together had done an amazing job in the last legislative session, and the timing couldn't have been better, right? Because curbside pickup is so important now, way more than ever. We lost 100% of our taproom business overnight, and people came out in droves to come buy beer to go. But anyway, so backing up, in Texas, we weren't able to sell beer to go in the state of Texas until September of last year. I think we were the last state in the United States as a state to allow package sales to go from a production brewery. So when you've got, such a entrepreneurial capitalism, get out of my shorts, go America kind of state, it's just interesting that it took so long to get that last little bit of freedom from a production brewery standpoint. But anyway, but we worked really well, I think, at the Capitol with lawmakers, with our wholesaler partners, with the Texas Craft Brewers Guild to get the beer to go laws changed. So that's been great. Part of that arrangement was, so there's a couple things. Eliminating the beer ale distinction, which I don't know if you guys are familiar with that, but basically anything brewed below 5.2% alcohol by volume is beer, and anything above is ale. They're taxed differently. They can be stored differently, or they have to be stored differently. How you move them throughout the state You have to handle them differently. So for us, and you have to have a different license to produce them. We never got the beer license. We only have the ale license. So we have a 4% beer on tap at the brewery, which we can do out of the tap room, and you can buy a 6-pack of this to go. Well, a crowler, we don't can it, but I couldn't sell this in the market. That distinction goes away. They have until 2021, end of 2021, to rewrite that code. There's some import-export things that changed, but we're not shipping beer to another country, so whatever. And then that's actually more, I think, prevalent to like, some of the brew pubs that have been working with like, barrel-aged beers and barrel-aged sours that want to ship it to the Netherlands or something. Yeah. But it was being double taxed before, and I think they cleaned that up. But in September, we were able to start selling packaged beer to go. So it was a small part of our business out of the tap room, a much smaller part of our business than maybe we thought it was going to be. We thought overnight we would just sell case on case. People would just come here to buy beer, and that wasn't the case. And I think part of it was an educational thing, because people have been programmed for so long to not think that that was an option, that no matter how much signage we put up, people walk past it, buy a beer at the bar, and then they go to the grocery store on the way home and buy beer. But with the coronavirus, if there is a silver lining, it forced people into, you want to support a local brewery, you can buy a curbside beer to go. And so the Dallas Morning News picked it up, local, news media on the TV picked it up. It was advertised very, extensively everywhere, from every brewery to the news media and everything. And so that was helpful. So we did, in April, a little bit less in total taproom sales than we did last year. That's the height of being shut down because of COVID.
That's awesome.
Because people were so jazzed to come out and support us and buy beer to go. But now, that being said, a $5 pint is much different than a $10 6-pack in terms of the margin. But, that law being changed couldn't come at a better time, because it was so critical for us to stay alive through that time period, with all of our taproom people and, the loss of revenue, the high margin revenue that comes out of the taproom, to get some of that back with beer to go. So, and now what we've, now that we've told everybody basically through everything that's happened that you can buy beer to go here, and you can get curbside pickup, you'll probably hear people honking as they pull up, because that's kind of how we've told people to let them know. There's a sign that says honk for curbside pickup, and then you can pick your order up. But we're now creating a more legitimate strategy on special taproom only releases, because we'd done that before, but they were really successful, well, moderately successful, but that culture didn't exist here. That culture now exists, and so we're kind of creating this taproom only strategy that will do 100, 150 cases and a handful of kegs, and the only way you can get it is by coming to the brewery. We may ship some of the kegs to some growler bars and some other accounts in the market, but for the most part, we're trying to beef up our super small batch specialty stuff. Now, at the same time that I say that, we also can't fill orders into the market, so we have to really be careful that we're not doubling down too much on the short-term taproom stuff, and be short-sighted into thinking that that's not going to affect our long-term relationships with wholesalers and retailer partners out in the market. But it's just one of those other things that you do to keep people interested and keep people engaged in the brewery. So it's as much for advertising and looking cool as it is to make money. So yeah, it's been huge.
I just noticed these move. That's kind of awesome.
Yeah, so those are exhaust vents, because when you're producing cotton, it's a lot of heat and a lot of moisture.
Oh, okay.
So there's a ton of humidity that you need to get out of the building. So those things are supposed to be like heat, humidity, moisture vents.
Okay.
And because they're on the top of the building, when the wind really picks up, they would get blown off.
Yeah.
So they have that fin, and then they have ball bearings inside, so they move with the wind.
Okay.
So when the wind is blowing that way, they'll all turn that way.
Gotcha.
And after a million years of being here at the property, they all still work.
That's funny.
That's crazy.
It's nuts. Like you can go and you can tap it and it'll twist. Yeah.
Huh.
And some of them kind of have gotten stuck, and we've moved them, and so if they've got a dented side, it might not move as well as it should. But all the ones that are facing that way are the ones that still work.
That's funny.
Yeah.
So we were talking a little bit before we started recording the podcast about your different beers. Let's talk a little bit about the different year-round beers, and then specifically the DDH series and the full-grown series.
Yeah, so 2020 was a fun year for us for core beers, right? Core is like a dirty word in craft beer geekdom, because, and I don't think it should be. It's just that just means that it's been around,
right?
And it's not new, and so, I want the newest, coolest, latest. And I'm guilty just as well as anybody.
Sure.
That's what keeps this fun and exciting, but. It's when you have a core beer that in today's day and age still sells well, we're winning, right?
Yeah.
And so, and I don't mean just like I mean like we as a beer drinking community, because it has to work for all of us. And so when you have a beer like Juice Pack, which is growing like crazy every day, and what we were talking about earlier is like, I love DDH, it's one of my favorite beers, it's the beer that put us on the map, but like, I'll have one. It's 7% alcohol content. It's not huge, but it's still a bigger beer. If you're going to have a couple of beers, you can get through 3 of those, and then you're kind of tired. But Juice Pack being super aromatic and flavorful and have all those great bright dry hopping flavors, but be a little bit crisper and 5.5%, you can drink a DDH and then have 4 Juice Packs. Don't drive if you do that, but you can you can drink those things. And so we're trying to create a core lineup that fits within, first off, what we want to drink selfishly, but also with what fits into what the new age of beer drinkers want to drink. And the nice part about that is that you have these super hazy, thick, delicious IPAs that don't have any bitterness and taste like juice. Well, that's like what my grandma wants to drink too, Like, she likes the fruit flavor, but doesn't like the bitterness.
Yep.
So, beer geekdom has pushed us into a more marketable and open to more palates kind of a beer. Great. What I don't like about, not me, but in theory, right? What the one doesn't like about an Imperial Stout is the boozy, big, dry, dark, molasses kind of like bitter Imperial Stout from like the 90s, right?
Yeah.
Well, now they taste like cinnamon rolls, which, for better or worse, a lot of people like that.
Yeah.
And so, okay, so like we can learn something from that. So let's scale down some of these ridiculous beers, ridiculous in a good way and in a funny way, and make them for everybody. And yeah, they're still going to be a little bit expensive. Juice Pack is an $11.99 6-pack compared to a $9.99 6-pack of our IPA. But it's so approachable to such a big audience that the craft beer freakazoids can totally get behind because of that nice aromatic punch of that Citra and that Mosaic. But I have people all the time who you would not expect to be a super craft beer fan just tell me how much they love Juice Pack. So anyway, to get back to your question about cores, it's kind of creating a lineup of beers that everybody can get down on and have in their rotation. Because you expect there to be a rotation, but it's enjoyable enough that people would come back to it, even with all the variety out there. That this is all great. I'm so glad I tried it, but I kind of just want to have a Juice Pack. Like, that is what we're shooting for. So with 2020, it's fun for us is because we've expanded our core lineup. That was one of the things that in 2019 that we learned is you can get case stacks all over the place with these super fun hazy beers, and you're super hyped up and people love your stuff and they want to support you and all that, but like really winning and selling more beer in the grocery stores means having a well-balanced core lineup that you can like own some real estate at like a major grocery store chain. That's when you're going to sell more stuff. But how do we take our strategy of core and sell it to old school grocery? And what we've come to find out is it's not super easy, but at the end of the day, if it sells, it sells. And so when we can show them that it's winning in the rest of the market, they can't not participate in it. And then you gain their trust, and then they're more likely to say yes to other things that they hadn't thought about, wanted to go with previously. So for us, that means Evil Dankster gets a shot. That means Neon Shades gets a shot. So then we get to experiment with other core products that, may not have been an easy sell in the past because we've had such success with the other stuff that we've been able to get in. Anyway, so we've added a couple of core beers in Evil Dankster and in Neon Shades. And we thought that we would sell a couple hundred cases a month of that stuff because it's new and it's core, and core is supposed to be boring, right? But they have blown away our expectations. And so it's exacerbating the problem of, we had a really cool lineup of seasonal beers that we were going to try and do one-offs and all that kind of stuff. But when your new core products are growing at a rate that's 6x what you were expecting, then you start to lose seasonals to make sure that you got room to fill that demand. But that's kind of where our core strategy has kind of gone and evolved to now being National Standard, IPA, Juice Pack, Evil Dankster, and Neon Shades. I kind of set DDH aside because yes, it's around all the time, but it changes every month, and the price point is quite a bit higher, so it kind of sits aside in grocery's mind and in I think the customer's mind as being like, well, then there's also DDH, right? So, but what made 2020 fun for DDH is that we actually were able to go to our hop wholesaler and say, here's our wish list for the year. We want to brew these beers with these hops and these ratios. And then we flew out to Portland and met with them. And they went down the list and were like, yes, 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 no, yes, no, yes, yes. And they said yes to most everything that we asked for. And the things they said no to were easily pivotable on. And so we created a really cool calendar of beers for 2020. And we got basically everything we wanted. So this is like a really nicely well-curated mix of hops for these beers that all have like thought behind the creation of them, right? Which flavors will play well with each other. And, there's a lot of hops that I think do stand on their own, and there's some that need support. And so knowing what those are and how those work together, you can get away with making an all Citra beer, though I would prefer not, right? But you can because Citra is such an amazing hop.
Right.
There's plenty of single hop mosaic beers out there. But if you add some Azaka and some, even Cascade, it can really elevate the Citra on its own. So, thinking through those things and then creating a schedule and then giving it to your wholesaler and have them say yes to basically everything was great. But then Corona hits. Mm-hmm. Everything has to change. That threw off a couple of months worth of DDH, both good and bad. But what it also did is there's a lot of people who aren't able to brew as much as they were able to previously. Because maybe they're a brew pub, or maybe because most of their volume was in draft, and that's all gone. So they're calling their hop suppliers saying, I can't buy up the rest of this super awesome hop that I have contracted. Is there any way you can help me get rid of it? So then they call us, and we're like, hell yeah, we'll take all of the rest of it,
Yeah.
So we've been able to use Galaxy a lot more. We've been able to get our hands on a big allotment of Nelson. So some hops that we've had access to previously, but not in the quantities that we've wanted to do the really cool things that we had in our mind. So DDH 2022 was not supposed to be 50% Galaxy and 50% Nelson. It was supposed to be a West Coast style DDH, which we're still going to do. But so that one is an out of cycle, DDH for us. But having that access to those hops has allowed us to do some cooler stuff and have some cool one-off beers in the tap room. So DDH is growing up a little bit. It's in major grocery stores now, so we have to be careful that we're not getting too weird with DDH. And by weird, I mean timing and quantity. Inventory is more the issue with that beer. I mean, the weirder we get, the more happy generally grocery is. But for example, the next DDH with Galaxy and Nelson, the variant, because we do a variant every time with DDH. It's kind of gotten off cycle a little bit, the timing of them, but it's going to be grapefruit. Because we wanted to accentuate some of the flavors in Nelson with the grapefruit, but not totally overpower it. So the next one, if I'm remembering correctly, okay, so the It's every month. I get them all confused. I don't remember what the hops are on the next one. I think we're doing the West Coast style one like month after next. But the next one, I think it's Ella, Brew 1, and Citra maybe. And the variant for that is pineapple, honey, and cinnamon.
Nice. Sounds awesome.
Yeah, it's like, who would have thought to put that
Right.
in a hazy IPA 2 years ago, And now all these brewers are making ridiculous hazy IPAs, and that's great. I love it. But so anyway, DDH has grown up a little bit this year, but it's also become more fun because we've been able to get access to things. And then we've been kind of talking internally about like what have we learned from all these DDH beers and playing with all these hops. We have some favorites. The market has some favorites. You can check Untappd and you can check people's comments on it. Like there's some clear favorites on hop profiles we've used. So is the next step then to take the feedback from the market and say these are your favorite hops and make a permanent hazy beer that's just with the best shit that we can get.
Gotcha.
So more to come on that.
Oh, right on.
Yeah.
And so just to I guess drill down on it, the DDH, and there's always a variant of each variation of DDH. That's monthly, is that right?
Right.
And then the full grown, how often is that one?
Full grown it's kind of designed to be every 6 weeks.
Okay.
Based on how many we've said we're going to do on our production calendar,
Okay.
which is public, we posted, but it's everything's changed this year with
Sure.
Corona. But it's originally designed to be every 6 weeks. We are probably going to have to pull Neapolitan out because of production constraints. So one of the fun variants that we did this year or fun seasonal one-offs we did that was really popular this year was the Imperial Pastry Sour, which was red currants, blackberries, graham crackers, vanilla, and whatever. It was awesome. We're going to do a lemon blueberry version. That's going to get pulled out probably because of production capacity. Full-grown Neapolitan, which was going to be the full-grown man in like a Russian cosmonaut outfit.
Okay.
I'm super jazzed about the artwork. Everybody laughs whenever I talk about it, like at the brewery. But that's probably going to get pulled out because of production constraints. But anyway, to answer your question, it's supposed to be every 6 weeks.
Okay.
And it's a little bit less like rigid. That one's a little bit more, it kind of, like, is it next week or the week after? I don't know. Who cares? It's full-grown man.
Sure.
It's in less like defined sets at grocery, so it's more of a liquor store beer anyway. So we have a little bit more flexibility with that, whereas we can't miss a beat with DDH.
Okay.
But that's another one where if you could almost kind of compartmentalize all the things that you do at a brewery, in the same way that Arrogant Bastard was a beer of Stones that had such a cult following that they almost treated it like a separate business until then they spun it off and it was a separate business, right?
Yep.
So you could compartmentalize different things at the brewery in that way. Core, DDH, full-grown man, sours. You could break it all up. We're too small to think about it that way. Everything has to be thought about everything.
Yep.
But, if I wanted to grow full-grown man into its own separate thing, then, the marketing behind Full Grown Man and, the timing of releases and all that kind of stuff, it'd be so fun to just hammer on Full Grown. But we're also doing a lot more barrel-aged beers this year. We did barrel-aged Full Grown Man in February or March, I think. And then Full Grown Scallywag comes out in a couple weeks, which is going to be the barrel-aged version of Scallywag. It's bourbon barrels. We've had a hard time with rum barrels. And each supplier we've talked to about rum barrels, they've kind of cautioned us, like, if you can get them from a local manufacturer, like, a brewery or a distillery in like Texas that does rum, that does aged rum, then that would be preferable because they treat their barrels well. But generally, if you're buying rum barrels from somewhere else, they're thought of as being furniture grade when they're done with it. They don't think about the secondary market, so they just throw them out back. And then when somebody comes and picks them up and tries to sell them, it's like, why are the rum barrels $100 a barrel when whiskey is $210? And it's like, well, because you should see it, So I know some breweries that have had problems with infections with rum barrels. I know that Prairie's done a really good job with their rum barrels. They probably are really good about cooperage with those and selecting maybe by hand the ones they're going to use and the ones they're not. It's just we're not in a place where we can do that right now. So we did Scallywag in bourbon barrels. And then one that we're really excited about is we're aging Full Grown Beast, which is a 13.5% version of Full Grown Man with coffee and chocolate in barrels. And the barrels rhyme with lanterns. It's not a true collaboration, so yeah. But for all like the whiskey snobs out there, it's going to be a really cool one. We really want the barrel to come through, so I know my brother is probably talking to his team about scaling back the adjuncts because, to use a barrel that's that awesome, you don't want to, mess with it too much, but Beast is going into those barrels. And then we're supposed to have full-grown Nick barrel age coming out at the end of the year, but we just, again, do you brew, 90 barrels of a 6-week fermentation time Imperial Stout and then put it in a room for, 6 months to 12 months when you could brew 10 batches IPA in that time,
Yeah.
So that's the kind of trade-off we're unfortunately having to make right now, but the new place that we're talking about, we have in our plans like a room, like a building for barrel aging beers that would be temperature controlled, and we would really at that point I think scale up the barrel aging program. So
That's awesome.
Oh yeah.
right now we have a 300 square foot room with doors with handles and knobs that and a forklift doesn't fit into it. Like it's a very small manual thing, but the popularity of barrel-aged beers has kind of waned a little bit, but they're still really highly sought after, and the longer you got them, the better they taste, and so we're still committed to an awesome barrel-aging program, but it just, kind of comes back to production capacity.
Sure.
So one question we ask everybody that comes on the show is, do you remember your first craft beer, or your epiphany beer that got you to give up the big brands and just stick with craft?
Yeah, so it's kind of funny because you can define craft through the ages very differently, right? The first beer I ever had was Coors Original Banquet Beer.
Okay.
And I was probably like 11 years old, and my dad is drinking Coors Banquet Beer. And I'm like, I want to try. And I was probably just being a little shit. And he eventually was like, fine, here, try it. And I drank it, and I was like, oh my God, this is so bad and so bitter. Who would drink this swill? And this is not a knock on banquet beer. I was 11, right?
Yeah.
I was a kid. And I was like, I'm never going to drink beer again. This is disgusting. And then, 5 years later, I'm like,
Right.
But, for me, I think the beer that, converted me was probably Fat Tire. Because I don't know why. It was just, my parents liked it, and... so I would give my dad a lot of credit for our liking better quality beer.
Yeah.
And I remember as a freshman in college, and this is illegal, and I don't know if I should talk about it, but he brought a keg of Fat Tire up to father-son weekend, dad's weekend or whatever. And so we're all hanging out in the front lawn drinking a keg of Fat Tire. And I just remember thinking the biscuity kind of caramel malt flavor in this is delicious, and I could have a million of these. And then we did, and then But there was a brewery in town that did a brown ale, that did a very mild but a pale ale, and they did an amber, and they checked all the boxes of things you're supposed to have in the 90s,
Sure.
And I just remember thinking this is great, and this is the stuff, this is what you would want to drink. Now, I drank a lot more of worse beer at that point in my life, but very early on, I think my whole family, we were like, let's do something better, let's drink something better. So Fat Tire, Sierra Nevada Pale Ale, yeah, I know that sounds obvious to say that, but that was the craft in North Texas in the late 90s, and so I wish I had a cooler story it was Live Oak Caf or something, but it was Sierra. I mean, and then again, kudos to those breweries, because Sierra Nevada Pale Ale and Fat Tire still great. I would drink both of those right now. Like you had one, I would take it. But
you're in good company.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I love hazy beer, but shit, I'll take a Sierra Nevada Pale Ale any day of the week.
Right.
So that was kind of me. And then when I moved to Chicago, that was really kind of like the point for me. I stayed in Oklahoma for a little bit after school, but then I moved to Chicago to go back to school. I got an MBA in Chicago at DePaul, and then I worked there in real estate for a little bit. But that was when I was able to really kind of like experiment.
Yeah.
Like I wasn't making a ton of money, but I could afford a $10 6-pack. And so me and a couple of buddies would just go buy, 1 to 2 new 6-packs per person, in addition to the case of bullshit we were drinking. Because still, we were broke and young in Chicago, and, I want to try that beer, but I want to how to do this one too. So, but that was fun because all the stuff from the Midwest, especially out of Michigan, all those beers are awesome. And, then we got really exposed to Founders and Bell's and, drank a ton of that. I mean, Bell's Two Hearted was my go-to. If I couldn't find anything else I wanted that was new, I would always default to Bell's Two Hearted and Three Floyds, Alpha King, and Gumball Head. Which, it sounds like, if you go to Texas and you're like, oh, that was kind of like my backup beer. Like, well, that you would trade for that beer, Like, holy shit, you would drink Three Floyds? That's so awesome. It's like, well, that was like in every liquor store in Chicago. Yeah. And then I lived there for 5 years and I never went to Three Floyds. That was like the biggest mistake of my life. It's like Dark Lord Day. We missed Dark Lord Day five years straight. Just never made it out there to Munster, and now I kick myself. But that was kind of like the awakening was with Fat Tire, and then the journey was through those beers in the Midwest, and then coming back here, it was kind of neat to see a handful of breweries popping up, but it was still kind of a wasteland. I mean, you had Community and Deep Ellum and Pedicolis and RAR and Franconia, but now, gosh, 5 years later, it is a whole new world in North Texas. A lot of really good beer in North Texas now.
Awesome. So another question we like to ask people the first time they're on the show is if you remember they call it the holy shit moment, where after the brewery was started and everything, you kind of went, oh my God, this is a thing and it's working.
Yeah. I do have a very specific moment. So when there's a handful. Okay. And they each have different levels of importance and intensity, I guess.
Sure.
So one of the first oh shit moments it's working was we got a phone call from a senior executive. Well, okay, back up. From a store manager at Target.
Okay.
A senior executive that lived in Collin County at the time reached out to this guy and said, hey, I saw a really cool display with Tupps, and I think craft beer is something we need to participate in. So can you work with those guys? I want a Tupps display in all 32 super Targets in North Texas.
Wow.
And at that point, if you'd asked anybody, they would have said, well, Target sells a little bit of beer, but it's not really like a beer destination. It's not. And I think the point was they wanted to change that opinion, right? Sure. Higher end wines, better beer selection. And so we were the catalyst for a better beer selection in Target in North Texas. So we're putting out these spool displays with like 20 cases on it at the front door. Like when you walk into Target, the first thing you see is the Tupps display.
That's awesome.
And people were pulling cases off to go buy them faster than we could put them on.
Oh, wow.
And so we loaded 15 stores day one. That was a Friday. And Saturday midday, like 4 of the Targets called our personal cell phone saying, it's all blown out. I need another 40 cases like right now.
Wow.
And so we dropped what we were doing and scrambled, filled, this is illegal, personal cars and delivery vans and whatever we could to get all the beer back to these Targets. Target can't accept deliveries on Saturday. It's just their receiving is not built for that. They have specific times and it's very structured and scheduled and stuff. But they basically allowed us to, in some cases, even bring beer in the front door. Just, I don't care, just get it on the shelf. We'll reconcile this on Monday kind of thing.
Yeah.
And, it was crazy. We were going through hundreds of cases of beer at some of the stores in Collin County in a month. Now that doesn't last forever. You know, if you're a regular Target shopper, you're not going to buy 2 6-packs off of it every time you stop in. So there was a big wave, and then it settled into like a normal rate of sale. But still, even with that normal rate of sale, I mean, that was what took us from 1,800 barrels a year to 2,700 barrels a year. Like that was like 1,000 barrels of beer at Target, you know. But it also opened everyone's eyes to like, oh, this brewery in McKinney makes decent beer. I should pay attention to that.
Yeah.
So it was great advertising, you know, because when we did expand to the next 15 stores in Fort Worth and kind of mid-cities area, I mean, so many people that had never heard of us before, now we're really paying attention. The other so that was like a pivotal moment from like a distribution and sales standpoint, but the really kind of, for me, the one that I think set us on this trajectory of like what we're on right now is when we first brewed and shipped DDH2, Series 2, into the market. So Series 1 was Citra, Mosaic, and Galaxy, but we used California Ale yeast, which is kind of what we use for like our house yeast, basically, from White Labs. And it was good. It was one of the best IPAs I've ever had, but it wasn't like really what we were shooting for. So we went back to California Ale yeast and we did a bunch of research on, you know, modifying the water profile and how that plays with specific yeast strains, and adjusted our dry hopping schedule, and then brewed DDH Series 2, which was, you know, we got to amp our game up and take it to the next level. We also put Series 2 in cans. So that was like really what did it. We brought samples to a handful of those like bottle shops like we were talking about earlier, the ones that are like super craft beer fans that like they know what they have and they market it themselves. They've got really active social media accounts. And one of the biggest in the area, Lone Star Taps and Caps, we sampled them on it. They were like, this is for real. I'm going to buy a ton of this. And we were like, oh, okay, cool, thanks. And so we did some social media, you know, posting ourselves. We talked about how cool we thought the beer was going to be. We knew it was awesome. We knew what we had. We thought it was great. We didn't know that the market would go nuts for it like in a day. We thought it would take some time to build up the acceptance for it. Hazies were still pretty new to North Texas. I mean, we were worried people would pour it into a glass and be like, what the hell is this, you know? So we ship it out, and this is after like months and months of toying with the recipe and working with suppliers. We flew out to Portland specifically to talk to our hop grower and supplier about these beers and really kind of make sure we understood what we were doing. And we ship it out, and Lone Star Taps and Caps bought 50, 80 cases. Wow. I think they asked for 100, and our distributor was like, we're going to give you 80. Like, we need to have some left for the rest of the market. And I think they sold through all of it in one weekend because they posted on social media, this is legit, come get it right now. And their social media following trusts them and their opinion. And so then they would go get it, go home, crack it open, and then they would post on social media too, the DFW Craft Beer, like the Facebook groups. Yeah. Hey, this is legit. You guys got to go grab this. And then it just fed on itself. And then the whole next week was just fielding angry phone calls from people. How come I can't get it? This is bullshit. Like, my store only got 6 cases. I need more. And it was just, people were legitimately mad at us for having shorted the market. But we didn't want to overproduce something that we weren't like super confident was going to be a thing yet, you know? Yeah. Like I said, Hazies were still new to North Texas. So yeah, Trillium and Treehouse and all these guys are making awesome stuff, and it's on social media, and the people who know. But for the most part, like, let's slow roll this and make sure we're on the right track here. And we way undershot. And so Series 3, we went much bigger, and 4 bigger, and then we figured out kind of like what the market wants and how much to produce, and now we're kind of trending with the market demand as opposed to, you know, we were way off back then. But that, you know, I think my sister, I think we were in the hospital because my sister was having a baby, and I remember being in the hallway, like she's like in a room 2 doors down, like giving birth, and I'm in the hallway like, I'm sorry, we can't get you more DDH. Like, we'll get you more DDH next time we brew it. Like, I'll put you on the list. Like, you know, it was like a really crazy month. And then it never really slowed down. I mean, now, like I said, as we've kind of, the SKU has grown up, and DDH has a pretty big following and all, but like, we're a much bigger brewery now. We can produce what the market demand is, and so we're more strategic with how we produce it. But there was 6 months where it was just a total shit show, and it was just that I think was a really big eye opener to craft beer geekdom in North Texas, and that's what really I think solidified the following for us was the launch of like the first 4 or 5 DDH beers.
Awesome.
So that would be like, there's the business side one, the kind of the first one that felt like, oh, this is going to be a thing now, and then the first couple of launches of DDH was the I don't know, next level one. So
let's talk a little bit about beer festivals. Of course, they're all canceled right now or postponed, but let's just talk a little bit about that and kind of your thoughts on beer festivals.
Yeah, it's funny too, because like when you think about like, I mean, canceling a beer fest, that sucks. Like, why are they canceling? But like, think about how it works.
Yep,
it's the worst place to go.
Yep,
during right now.
Absolutely.
I mean, if you have a bar or a brewery that's selling beer, it's like masks and gloves and sanitizing everything, and like that's probably a pretty safe place to get a beer if you're going to go out and get a beer, right?
Right.
But all these volunteers that are paid, just basically minimum wage to show up for a couple hours, and you just is anyone being safe and careful and making sure that you're sterilizing and sanitizing and people are
not after the first hour.
and you reuse the cup.
Yeah.
That's the hugest no-no right now. So we're all in plastic cups, and we're in plastic cups a lot of the time anyway, just because it's so difficult to keep up and manage with like all the nonsense that goes on here. But anytime anybody wants a glass, I mean, we can do glass, but they break and get stolen faster than they get
I bet
brought back. So in what we are hoping will be our new tap room, we'll do a proper pricing structure with real glassware, but it will also always be plastic cups for going to the field and hanging outside and whatever.
Yeah.
But right now, I mean, you get a little plastic taster glass or a glass taster glass, and you go to a bunch of different breweries, everyone's touching it and pouring, and it's like, I'm good.
Yeah, it's kind of terrifying, especially at something like a festival where it's, man, a couple hours into that, everybody's drunk, they're sharing glasses, and
and we there's a lot of people, a lot of breweries that don't take festivals as seriously as I think they should. Yeah. I think that that's not a place to check the box. That's a place to really showcase all the coolness that you are, and there are 4 maybe massive beer festivals a year for any brewery, depending on how many different markets you play in. And you tell me you can't roll your A game for 4 different festivals? 4? And they're for like 5 hours on one day of the year. I mean, it's like, when we roll out like, now we might be short-staffed and resources are split and we're trying to do too much. And if you think, I saw Tupps and they just looked okay, it's like, I promise you, we were in 20 different places that day. That's the only reason why. But we'll roll out Rusty, the marketing truck. That
was a hop jam last year.
Yeah, we'll roll that out with flags and tents and banners and all kinds of nonsense. Like, we want, when you see us at a festival, to think like, I want to drink their beer, Even if,
works.
Yeah, if our beer tastes the exact same as the brewery next to us, you're going to drink ours because we look cooler. It's a subconscious thing that just sucks people towards that. So I know that there's, I heard, stories of breweries in Austin and in Oklahoma and in North Texas that are like, why do I even have to sell you the beer? Like, you should just buy the beer from me and then just have your festival and I'll contribute beer, but like, do I even need to show up for it? And I'm like, what are you thinking? There's 20,000 people who like beer,
and they're gonna ask
coming
about
here.
Do you want some fucking volunteer talking about it?
The owner has to be here, the head brewer has to be here, the head salesperson has to be here. It should be like this is the one chance you have to engage with fans that at a massive scale, right? That can't come to your brewery the way that local people can. So anyway,
there's nothing worse. Going to those festivals happens at Hop Jam quite a bit with some of those,
the national brands.
Yeah, the person asks, "What do you want?"
Yeah,
and like, well, can you tell me anything about them? They're right there. Yeah,
they don't work for the brewery. They either work for the distributor or they were hired by the event just to cover the booth.
Yeah.
I mean, we have in our contractor agreement that with our distributors, if we can't be there, that they're obligated to have somebody there, the equipment to pour and somebody to pour. Because it's usually the festival that covers that, but the distributor in that capacity has a lot more resources. Or we split the cost of hiring somebody, whatever. But like we need to have something in there that says that we're covered. But that's not our goal. Our goal is to be there personally, to like talk to people and just engage. Because I mean, I've had so many people come up to me like years later and say, "Yeah, I came to the brewery and you did the tour. It was so awesome. Thanks." Or, "Oh, I saw you here at, the, what's the one in Austin, the big one? Texas Craft Brewers Festival.
Oh, yeah.
You were here a couple years ago. Yeah, it was great talking to you." It's like, it seems small, but like that person probably told 2 or 3 people that they had a great time, and then, I don't know. And it's hard to say that any one of these little things is the reason why you're successful or add to your sales.
Yeah.
And when you are so in the thick of it every day, like brewing and trying to just be caught up, the last thing you want to do is go to a festival. But that's like the wrong attitude. That should be like, "Oh, here's our time to shine and show everybody what we're doing," And anyway, yeah. Rant over.
No,
they are painful and they are hard and they require work, but this is like the opportunity to showcase who you are.
Right. One of the last questions I had was, we've talked about your
You can cut that.
Oh, yeah, we'll cut
You can leave it in here if you want. That was a
talked about the
tangent.
festivals quite a bit.
Yeah. Sorry, go ahead.
Either way.
Yeah.
But
Trade secrets.
yeah, right. The distribution of Texas and us being from Oklahoma, how's it going in Oklahoma? And do you have any plans to expand any more than you are right now?
Geographically, not right now, no. I mean, like, we have a special connection to Oklahoma because I went to OU, my sister went to OU, my brother went to Oklahoma State, Tupper went to Oklahoma, ran restaurants in Oklahoma for a while, lived and worked in Oklahoma for a long time. So when we were talking about the Oklahoma market, it felt a little in some way of like kind of coming home. Okay. I went to school there and I lived there for 3 years after. My sister went to school there and lived there for 5 years after. I mean, it wasn't like you didn't just go graduate and then, gosh, can't wait to get out. I mean, we really, built a life in Oklahoma for a lot of us for a long time, and especially Tupper being there for years and years and years. So, my sister, when she graduated, she moved to Tulsa. I lived in Tulsa for a while. So, it was a market that we felt very comfortable with. It was a market that we felt a connection to. And it was fun, like I want to go watch an OU game and drink, National Standard. Like it's like a selfish vanity thing too, to a certain extent. I'm not gonna lie, it's we don't sell in the stadium, and we need to whatever. But anyway, it's just like, yeah, I want to go to Oklahoma. There are people there, like it's Oklahoma. I don't know. It's hard to explain. But anyway. We went to Austin because we had a distributor approach us with a really great plan on how to like penetrate the Austin market and grow there. And man, they were right. We've done so well in Austin. Last month, actually, our IPA was the #1 selling Texas craft brand in HEB in the Central Texas region.
Awesome.
Now, I don't know what they include in that, but even if they're not including a handful of super successful breweries, like whatever, we're in good company, in Austin, and how successful our regular IPA has been, right? That's not DDH or Juice Pack. That's just like, it's funny because like I heard somebody in the tap room just a second ago saying, "Well, I'll just have your IPA." It's like, well, hang on now. Let me tell you about it. You're going to like it. But, so that's been great to have had success in Austin. I mean, obviously, North Texas is our home market. Benny Keith's done great for us. Love them and what they've been able to do for us and our partnership. But in terms of future growth, we don't have Houston. I mean, it was the conscious decision to go to Oklahoma before Houston, partly because the laws were changing, things were in flux, and we thought there was an opportunity, partly because it felt like coming home.
Yeah.
But the next big thing would be, in my mind, our distributor in Austin has San Antonio as well, but San Antonio, we barely scratched the surface. Okay. We've also, I think, barely scratched the surface in Oklahoma. So I think Oklahoma and San Antonio would be the next 2 obvious places to really focus on. Right. But in terms of like next big geographical push, I think it's probably going to come in part with the, building the new brewery.
Okay.
We go to Houston and we flesh out the rest of the state of Texas.
Yeah.
because right now we're not south of San Antonio, and we're not south of like Nacogdoches, East Texas. So like meaning no Houston, no Galveston. We're very soon gonna go hot and heavy into El Paso. Ben and Keith has the rights for us in El Paso, so that's already kind of a deal that was in the works anyway. We were supposed to launch them in March, and then
Shit happened.
yeah, a lot of shit happened. So El Paso, we're coming for you, but we just gotta
Yeah.
So, but Oklahoma, I think, and San Antonio are kind of where our next geographical pushes will be. But then, I don't, depending on who you talk to, and plans change and goals change over time, but we could grow to 100,000 barrels a year if we really wanted to invest in that growth. Now, there's big brands in Texas that, are barely halfway there to that, and they've been around for 20 years, right? So that, I'm not saying that's possible. I'm not trying to like delusions of grandeur.
Yeah,
I'm
sure.
But what are your goals, right? Do you want to be a 100,000 barrel a year brewery, or do you want to be the most badass 20,000 barrel a year brewery that anyone's ever seen?
Yep.
And you may not make as much money at 20,000, but you might have a higher quality of life. And our plan is not necessarily to take over the world and be rich. I mean, money's cool, but like, but like that's. I mean, I think like one of the things that maybe will end up separating us from the typical craft brewery into 2021 and 2022 is we just like cool shit. Like, and because of that, we kind of view ourselves a little bit more as a beverage manufacturer than just a craft brewery. I think the craft brewery, Tupps, is our heart and soul. That's who we are creatively, and that's our personality, and that's the family business that will never go anywhere. That's us. That's the family. But we could make cold brew coffee. We could do the hard seltzer, which we kind of talked about a little bit. We could do, we've talked about doing a couple other product line extensions that would be into the flavor malt beverage or the seltzer or the whatever. Like we can manufacture alcohol. We got a bunch of big tanks. We're missing a nitrogen drip from our canning line to be able to do flat beverages. But you add that piece, and we could do coffee. So, we could grow in other ways.
Sure.
So we could have a 20,000 barrel a year, say, target for the brewery. We want to grow there, and that's our happy place. But then, are there other things that we can do that are complementary, that are fun? I like cheese. I'm not saying we're going to make cheese, but I like other shit. So,
Yeah.
I don't know. I wouldn't want to pigeonhole ourselves into thinking like, we've got to be one thing. And there's a craft pride, there's a mentality that comes with being a craft beer manufacturer, and I get that. Like, it's a fun business. It's a very, egomaniacal business at the same time, for better or worse. I think for better for the most part, because people put out really cool shit because of that. It's an extension of their personality, who they are. You don't get the art and the creativity in most industries. This is a very unique business. And this is a huge, awesome creative outlet for us, but I could see us doing other things and growing in other ways also. I have a cool concept for an awesome ice cream shop. Now, is that 10 years down the road and as an extension onto the new tap room? I don't know. But there's too many other cool things you can do. Yeah. Now, all that being said, the heart and soul of this business is the brewery, the family, the people that we connect with here. This is where it all starts. So, we're launching a hard seltzer company in a little bit. It's not a company, it's Tupps. It's under Tupps. But it'll say Tupps Brewery Side Hustle on the can, because it's subordinate to the brewery.
Yeah.
Now, not to say that it doesn't outgrow the brewery and become its own separate monster that is in, 20 states, regionally distributed on airplanes. I don't know. But, that's a different thing.
Yeah.
And we think about that differently. But it is, in our mindset, in our culture, subordinate to the brewery. So, anyway, growth can happen in a lot of different ways for us. That's kind of how we're thinking about it.
Yeah, that's awesome. So I think, I guess kind of as we start to wrap things up here, the tap room here is among the most unique I've seen. You guys have a lot of cool shit laying around and everything like that. Can we kind of talk about what to expect when you walk into Tupps Brewery to have a pint here?
Yeah, I mean, Well, I mean, one of the cool things I think is that when you walk into the building, and this is for better or worse from a production standpoint, you walk right into the equipment.
Yeah.
Like, it's not hidden from you. You can't not see it. When you, so you're front and center, and especially now with, kind of being out of production capacity, we're not canning right now. I don't know why. Maybe because cans didn't show up on time. But, like, we could be canning right in front of you at any moment. They're not brewing today because my brother is in Florida, but they're doing a bunch of cellar work today. But, I mean, you saw Davin running around. I mean, he's actively transferring beers and cleaning tanks today. So it's very much in your face.
Yeah.
But then, you make an immediate sharp left-hand turn and you've got awesome hand-built bar, tons of beers on tap, all kinds of weird nonsense hanging from the ceiling, opens up into a spacious place with no heat, no air. So there, there's that.
Wear shorts.
Yeah, wear shorts. It's one of those things where I think, like, you feel better about the experience because you had to brave the elements. Now, that doesn't go forever, right? Like, people will have one beer and be like, it's cool, but it's hot. But, like, if you had air conditioning, you might have 3 beers.
Yeah.
So I understand the need for air conditioning, and it has to be a part of our next spot. But there is something that I think unique vibe that this place puts off by just being like a barn in the middle of nowhere.
Yeah.
All the garage doors, we've 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 garage, big, huge overhead doors that open up. So it's like you're inside, but you're kind of outside too. Live music every Friday, Saturday, Sunday, hand-built stage. It's all just stuff that came out of the old cotton mill that we repurposed. It's all, done by us. We didn't hire a general contractor. We will for the new brewery. But the goal for the new facility, right, if all comes together, knock on wood, is the vision is this, but like with air conditioning. You know what I mean? So, like, our soul is here, so that's got to be represented in another spot. So, we just don't have the time or capacity to do it now. But there's a ton of old wood and metal, and it's all broken down, but it all feels very homey and fun and comfortable. Yeah. And I think that the braving the elements thing is fun, again, to a certain extent. What was really fun is in the winter when it's 25 degrees outside, and with the metal walls, it can even feel colder in there. And people show up in, like, ski coats, and they're drinking cold beer on a cold day at Tupps.
That's awesome.
And the TVs are on, and they're hanging out, like, and there might be 10, 15 people in there, but still, it's like, you're cool, like, right. Thanks for coming out, like, and I hope we can preserve some of that. We're gonna have a cool beer garden and some other neat stuff and places to hang out in the new space, but I don't know, it is unique. And we've had a lot of people come up from Austin and say the only place I've ever been that even compares to this is Gesture King, which is cool because
I can see that.
Because that's a barn built in the middle of a 20-acre pasture. It's such a cool spot, and so that's a compliment because we had to recreate something from a 1950s steel building that was built for flat storage, and so we don't have rolling hills and trees and a pasture to help support the vibe. So anyway, it's fun. It's a neat space to hang out. Very family friendly. A lot of live music. So
awesome.
Mm-hmm.
Before we wrap, do you have anything else you want to throw out? Any final thoughts?
I mean, not necessarily. I mean, the biggest thing I think is like, from like the Oklahoma perspective that I would want to convey to people, like I've kind of already been talking about, is this is not a purely financial, like, let's take over the next market kind of a thing. There is much more of a real reason to want to be in Oklahoma than that. So I hope people see that and get
awesome
that.
to hear that.
I mean, I think, when we go to retailers and say, like, kind of the story, and we all went to school here, Tupper lived here for years, ran a business here. I hope they get that, and I hope that we are able to convey that to people. I mean, we have an unfair advantage to other regional breweries because we're a couple hours away.
Yeah.
You guys drove down here. And Oklahoma breweries have an advantage to regional breweries because, we love Prairie, we love Coop, everything rhymes with orange blows out here whenever we get it. And so there is a little bit of like a, hey neighbor, this is cool stuff, right?
Yeah.
And I kind of want to cheat and think of us as being closer than that because I lived there for so long and I just feel like that's like my place, So anyway, I hope that people feel like our connection to Oklahoma is stronger than just hopefully they buy a couple of cases of beer. And we really want to do cool stuff in every market that we participate in, especially including Oklahoma. So right now we're kind of on hiatus for some of the things that we generally do or have been talking about, like, events and parties and that kind of stuff. But when the world opens back up, I would expect to see some cool stuff from us, not just beer-wise. I mean, certainly we all really cool stuff coming out, but just being creative and fun about like throwing parties and having events and just, again, to kind of build that connection to people in Oklahoma, because we're not trying to be the best, and we want to be a really good partner to our retailers and our wholesaler.
Yeah.
But it doesn't stop there. Like I want to be a known, what is it? Everybody knows your name kind of thing. Yeah. I want to have that like kind of thing. Yeah. I'm okay being the neighbor and not the family member. Yeah. But I just want to do more. Yeah. And when I get to go back up to Oklahoma, I always have a really good time, and it's fun to go to the old haunts, and and so that would be one thing I would want to make sure people kind of get from us. I got 2 young kids, so I can't get up there as much as I would like to. I would love to go to a bunch of OU games, and I know my brother would love to go to OU and OSU games, and with young kids it's hard, but that's kind of where our heads are at. Like, we're not in Houston, why would we go to Oklahoma before Houston? It's because we wanted to be in Oklahoma,
Yeah,
awesome. And then I would also say that, it sounds cliche, but the best is yet to come. We've been constrained by factors outside of our control in some ways, and so creativity is going to continue to increase, and our ability to express that creativity is going to continue to increase. We're going to have, like we were talking about earlier, the new seltzer launching soon. That I think people will be excited about when they see the art is different. And we kind of took a step away from our typical Tupps branding and really spent some time and money in making sure that was really fun and creative, and worked with a flavor company in Chicago for a while on nailing the right flavors. And they're different and unique and they're fun, but they're still flavorful and delicious enough that they're going to be familiar enough that people were going to, I think, really appreciate them. And then, when we grow up a little bit, maybe in the new space, coffee and just, I don't know, it's like we're always doing new things and changing, and so it's like, come on this journey with us kind of a vibe, not we got tattoos and beards and we're not friendly people and you should appreciate us, but I'm not going to be your friend. Like, that's the opposite of what we are, So it's not, I hate that vibe. I get it, but, and it's, it's kind of cool to look at those breweries and be like, oh yeah, but being in the industry, I think it's garbage, but being outside the industry, I think it's kind of cool to, my brother is the most friendly guy you'll ever meet, and he doesn't have any tattoos. He's got a beard and he's got a crazy fun personality, but anyway, it's a family business. We, it's all in the family, and so we, the hype thing, I get it. I don't like it necessarily because it feels weird. I feel like, stressed out when it's funny because we try to play into it a little bit, like to create my brother and almost kind of like a little bit of a celebrity, like to gain some traction, like in marketing that way. But I don't know. I just want to be like the local brewery that you want to like. That's awesome. I don't need there to be hype. There has to be, because we don't have the production capacity to do it.
Yeah. And
we're growing, but if we can make enough and everybody wants to drink it, then we can all just hang out and have a beer, right? So anyway, that's
right on.
I guess that's it. I guess
until the next one.
The next time you guys come up, we'll have a lot there's a lot of things changing, and there could potentially be a lot of stuff to talk about, even 6 months from now. So.
Awesome. Sweet.
Yeah.
Well, we'll gladly come back.
Yeah.
And thank you so much for doing this and having us down today.
Yeah, for sure.
And I guess that's going to do it for this time.
You've just listened to another round of Pub Talk. Thanks again to the folks at Tupps Brewery for having us out today. It's an awesome brewery and definitely worth the trip if you have the time. And if you haven't had their beer yet, make sure to pick it up at your favorite liquor store and bottle shop. As always, if you like what you heard today, show us some love all over social media at Pub Talk Podcast. And to continue getting alerts every time we drop an episode, don't forget to hit that like and subscribe button before you go. You can also find out all you've ever wanted to know about the show and more by heading over to our website, pubtalkpodcast.com. And remember, folks, there's never anything too big or hard in life that you can't handle it over a few beers with your good friends. So until next time, just chill to the next episode.